Greetings, YouTube. I know everyone seems to hate when someone says, I had a dream, but a lot of my dreams are inspirational when it comes to gaming ideas. And I had one recently, and my dreams tend to be very cinematic. So I'm going to lay out what happened in the dream and then kind of what have I built off of that. I used it as a springboard for some further ideas. And I think it could make an interesting uh, adventure idea for a modern setting, whether you're going to be running a real world police procedural or you're going to be doing something that is dealing with the supernatural, or even if you're going to be pulling in the mythos to this. So it's kind of you could push this in different directions depending on how you want to use it. So essentially, the dream was that there was a large city, I think it was Atlanta, and there had been a number of murders over a 2 month period, like 4 or 5, and all of them involved strangulation. Very particular strangulation. Each one involved the use of a silk piece of cloth. Um, so that got an FBI like serial killer team, criminal minds kind of group, to come in here and start trying to figure out what the pattern was, how were these people linked, trying to figure out where this person or persons could be hitting next. The city was in a panic. So you're talking like, whatever, something strangler. It's probably going to be in the buzzwords in the social media and on the mainstream news. Now, I was playing an FBI agent that was called in for another reason. And this reason was that some children had been kidnapped. 7 children in a transport van had been kidnapped when their driver had been shot and killed. And they just disappeared. And nobody knows what happened. The van was eventually found, but there was nothing in there, and there was very little forensic evidence in the van. And so I was brought in because I was an FBI agent, and this involves kidnappings. Of course, there was not just me, but I was the lead investigator of this process. And anyone who knows anything about the storylines of crime films knows that these two cases are in fact linked. So I'm following leads, and eventually it takes me to a spot where I am hot on something. I'm actually chasing someone who potentially is the kidnapper himself. And of course, being the hot-headed investigator I am, I pursue him alone. I've got no backup. You can make up a reason why. The radio gets broken, it doesn't matter. The point is that I take a risk, I chase someone into an environment I shouldn't go, and it is in some kind of underground structure. So maybe, I don't know what the underground environs in Atlanta are like. Are they like anything like the environs we have underground in New England and in the Northeast, for example, New York and New Jersey? Are there large basements? Are there subway systems? I don't know. So maybe Atlanta's a bad choice. Maybe Newark's better. I don't know. Anyone who knows anything about Atlanta can tell me that. I know squat about Atlanta, other than it's a big city with a lot of diversity. So I presume this person, they essentially disappear because they're on their home territory. And while I'm closing in on the area that this person has been using as a base, I don't know if it's the only one they have, or if they have fallback positions, I discovered 2 things. There is a half-grown calf, as in like halfway between calf and adult, in the place. And it is of a type of calf that looks very similar to an Indian Brahmin cow. So the style that you see in the streets of India, wandering around because they are considered sacred animals and no one really gets in their way. And I find 2 of the children. And the children are not in good health. They are not responding properly. I potentially think they may be drugged. They appear to be deeply traumatized. And that's when my alarm clock went off and I woke up. So that's what we have going on. So I'm thinking 2 cases, they're linked. The Indian cow, and then the inspiration hits me. Thugi cultist. So this guy, and he's Caucasian, he's just bought in hook, line, and sinker to the Thuggee cult of the 19th century. Um, he is a practitioner of this process, and he has been murdering people as a religious sacrament. He killed the driver of the van in a different way to throw people off, which worked. And he kidnapped the children so he could raise them in his own personal cult. So maybe he stalked the children in the sense that he knew that these kids, or there were kids being transported from point A to point B. They had a routine they went through every day, and he knew that there was only ever one driver. So he planned this out, took the driver out, took the kids, transferred them to another vehicle, and then moved them into a base, or bases, because in the dream I only find 2 of the kids, so maybe he's moved some of the children elsewhere. So I'm able to recover 2 of them, even though they were deeply traumatized. They can pretty much not offer me any useful information. I also, if I remember correctly, one was I think at the pre-verbal stage, and the other was not very much older, like 3 or 4. So they're not going to be able to give us a lot of information as far as the witnesses are concerned, even if they had not been deeply traumatized and potentially drugged. So now you have this cultist operating in this big city. He's trying to brainwash these children to raise them to become members of his own cult, so that they can then spread this cult from the city outward, eventually moving and becoming Thuggee cells. So the kind of using a cell structure to limit the possibility of them all being caught by the law enforcement. Now, I heard recently an interesting FBI statistic, and the FBI predicts that there at any one time there could be as many as 300 serial killers in the United States. That's terrifying. Now, here's the thing. How many of them are members of a Thuggee cult? Is this a pure real-world police procedural that you're running? Is it thrust into the cyberpunk era? Is it the supernatural? Is it the mythos? Is it all of the above? Because you can do that. You could have a cyberpunk supernatural mythos game that has many different elements all bleeding into each other. And this, eventually, you have the 2 cases that are going on. Serial killer kidnaps. They eventually cross paths. And I think there was probably going to be some stupid relationship link that would be dumb. I would much prefer to have something more along the lines of what happened in Fury Road, where you have these 2 characters, one male, one female, and there's never a romantic link between them. Or maybe both teams are being led by men, and you do have a romantic link. So it'll be a nice little actual consummation of a gay relationship, as opposed to gay baiting. So this is just an idea I had. I've done nothing with it. Again, it was inspired by a dream I had, and I kind of used it as a springboard to move forward with that. So I thought I'd throw it out and see if people can find any use for it. Do you think that the idea of a Thuggee cult or just cultist, singular, could have some traction in America? And do you think that doing this kind of classic, both these cases are the same guy, is too much of a trite trope? Or is it acceptable and it's all right to use this for, narrative shorthand? So tell me what you think about there being a Thuggee cultist or a cult in modern America.